This is the Anthrobiology Podcast, hosted by me, Gabby LaPera. Every 2 weeks, I interview a biological anthropologist about what makes us, us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Anthrobiology Podcast. Joining me here today, I have Christiane Baigent from Colorado Mesa University. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm really excited to have you here. You are our second body farm person, I believe.
There isn't a ton of us.
just to set expectations for what this episode's about. It's gonna be about forensics and body farms. We had Danny Westcott on from Texas State, who's lovely. And I don't know.
Danny's fantastic. I and everyone else adores Danny.
He's the best. He's so cool. I don't know if there's like some kind of rule that y'all have to be really nice or something, but 2 for 2 so far.
We're only 2 minutes in. I'm just kidding.
As we've been talking or dancing around, you have a what is colloquially known as a body farm, but what is formally known in your case as the Forensic Investigation Research Station, FIRS, which is cute because it's like an evergreen and you're in the mountains in Colorado. I like that. And it's in Whitewater, Colorado, and it was established in 2013.
Correct.
And it's really cool because it is, I read, the highest and driest decomposition study area in the United States or maybe the world.
Yeah, so we actually have 2 facilities. We have the mothership in Whitewater. So we're about 4,600 feet above sea level. So we are high elevation, arid. It's like a desert-like climate. But then there's my passion. I've worked casework up in the Rockies and done research up there from an undergrad moving forward to my PhD for like the last 15 years. So we have a second facility outside of Fairplay, Colorado, up in the Colorado Rockies at just under 10,000 feet.
Wow.
So I think between both are the highest. The one at 10,000 feet, which is really where my research focus is, definitely the highest.
And just for our metric listeners, because I know that we have some, that's about 3 kilometers. So that's high.
Yeah, 3. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'm used to giving it in meters. So I was like, no, it's not 3 meters.
It's 3,000 meters. Wow, metric conversions.
Yes, about 3,000 meters.
Yeah, I was actually just in Oaxaca for a wedding. And a couple of people got altitude sickness even at Oaxaca level, which is like 6,000 feet.
Yeah.
So it's high.
It is. I worked as a death investigator in Summit County up in the Rockies for 6 years. And mountain sickness is no joke. That's my PSA.
Yeah, and in case you're wondering what it feels like, feels gross. Like at the beginning stages of it, you just feel like nauseated and tired and just
headachy and lethargic.
If you are someone who has a period, it feels like you're getting your period.
Yeah, that's not a bad analogy. That would also be why many men end up dying of mountain sickness, because they don't recognize that anything feels off.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, maybe I ate a bad chocolate bar. No, actually, eating a chocolate bar does help a little bit with altitude sickness. Actually, I don't know if that's true. That might be false. My grandparents are doctors, and they took me up to the highest point in Venezuela, which I don't know how high it is, but pretty damn high because there was snow up there, and it's a tropical country.
Yeah.
And I was getting altitude sickness, and they're like, here, have some chocolate. It'll make you feel better. And I assumed that was medical, but now as an adult, I'm like, that was not a medical.
A minute.
I am realizing this as we speak. That's fine. Cool. I turned out fine. Obviously, here I am 30 years later.
You survived.
Mm-hmm. Back down at sea level. But yeah, but you said it's like desert like. So not only are you very high, but it's also very dry. I know at the lower elevation one in Whitewater, you get like 9 inches of rain a year, which is almost nothing.
Yeah, it's wild. We used to get some snow over the winter, and then yes, a very little bit of rain. And with you saying it's storming there today, we actually had one of our first like significant, and by significant, it's not wildly significant, rainstorms today.
Totally, totally. I mean, but the thing is, like up there, in desert areas, when you're high up, when it rains, it gets scary because you can get like landslides or like flash floods. So it's yeah.
Yeah, especially with the type of soils we have. They're kind of complex, they're clays, but then they're also like a sandy loam mixed in. So things can get very complicated with sort of sudden weather, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I know. It's one of the things that when you live in the lowlands, you don't really think about because it just rains there all the goddamn time.
Yeah. Well, up at high altitude, it's we have kind of the opposite. We have, it obviously we have heavy snow overburden all winter. This winter kind of being the exception, because as it turns out, global warming is real. But over the summer, we get what's called the summer monsoons. So in the afternoon, these thunderstorms, you can watch them slowly approaching, and then they might dump 10% of the annual precipitation on one site in one storm. And so when you're up on the side of a mountain and suddenly getting pelted by hail and an aggressive thunder lightning storm, things can get really dramatic, which is part of the reason I end up working a lot of cases up there.
This episode's probably just going to be full of PSAs like,
Yep.
be careful when you're up in the mountains.
Listen when you hear thunder, get down to a lower. Just seen too many ways that people die.
Right. Well, which actually brings us to our point, which is, I think that Danny maybe touched on this, but I don't know in how much detail. But one of the reasons that there are multiple body farms is not because there's like a bunch of people who are like, I want my own dead bodies to look at. There is a research reason behind it.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So there are different environmental variables in different regions of the United States. There's different flora, there's different fauna, there's different atmospheric conditions, and all of those are going to network with one another, and they are going to affect the trajectory of decomposition. So even looking at decomposition between the FIR's high altitude facility and the FIR's whitewater facility, we see very different patterns of decomposition. So then if you extrapolate that to like the Southeast United States, where it's extremely humid, extremely hot, there's a different suite of insects, there's environmental conditions that are more conducive to insect behavior. You're going to see completely different patterns in how the environment affects individual and sort of group decomposition when we're looking at it in a cohort or from a study perspective.
I think it's also worth actually asking, what is decomposition?
Yeah, that's a good question. So decomposition is just sort of the sequential breakdown of human tissue following death. So when you die, you don't actually fully die. Your brain function ceases, your heart function or cardiovascular system ceases to function. But that doesn't mean that all of your cells also die at that exact moment. So decomposition is a really complex process of, we used to look at it as something sort of very linear that we could say, marble shows up, float shows up in sort of this nice linear pattern. But with all of these different decomposition facilities, we're seeing, no, this phase doesn't happen here or not as frequently or not in this order. But what it essentially is once you no longer have vital systems supporting your tissue and organ systems, they are going to begin to break down. So initially what is going to happen is People are variably always shocked to hear what we think of as ourself is not fully ourself. So we are colonized by bacteria and other critters that actually serve a lot of physiological functions for us. So early in the postmortem interval, those bacteria are going to start to kind of take over because our body systems are no longer keeping that load in homeostasis or keeping their activity ranged in. So they will, to overly generalize, they'll start to feed on the organ systems that they live in. And then that is going to cause them to, metabolize as they feed. Byproduct of that is typically the release of gases. So the release of those gases are going to become entrapped in major lumen in the body, so like the stomach, and that's why we see the stomach kind of expand or bloat. And then as tissue dissolution continues, those gases are going to be able to begin to escape via other routes. We're also going to have tissue breakdown just as a byproduct of we no longer have proteins, cells in place to maintain them. So it's basically an advancement of this process until we get into what is called moist decomposition. And that's when the body starts very actively weeping different fluids. So just, intracellular waters from tissue structure. And then as you move through moist decomposition, here at high elevation, we run into desiccation. So essentially a natural form of mummification. Mummification is culturally propagated. Desiccation is a byproduct of the environment because we have such high UV up here. And then we have these kind of sandy soils. Essentially, the environment is working to remove moisture from the body, both from the ground and from up above through heat and convection. And so that is going to result in really rapid water loss and contribute to that process of desiccation. And it's interesting here because we are very protective. I mean, every facility is very protective of its donors, but we won't let any media inside of the fence. We're very selective about the students we allow inside of the fence because in this process of desiccation, some of our donors might maintain recognizable facial features like years into the postmortem interval.
Yeah.
And they'll also maintain, like I always say, I'm very identifiable because they will maintain tattoos in that tissue desiccation.
Listeners, Dr. Baigent is got full sleeves and they're beautiful, just in case you're wondering.
So we're very careful about who photographs our donors, what photographs we present, even, in scientific publication for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And other areas will see desiccation, but it's sort of the degree to which we see it is pretty unique.
Yeah. And it is really amazing. I've seen both mummified and desiccated bodies, and it's so wildly different than when people are squishier, when they're just bones.
Yeah.
And it's really incredible.
I did my PhD with Gretchen Dabbs at Southern Illinois University, and I had been studying decomp in Colorado, working cases in Colorado forever. So very familiar with kind of the process of desiccation we see here. That turns over into when we bring donors inside, we remove all of that soft tissue so that we can matriculate them into our osteology collection.
Mm-hmm.
And here that takes us like upwards of 8 weeks because of how dense the tissue is. When I moved to Southern Illinois, I went out to work in her facility and I was like, is that a skeleton? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm just not used to seeing donors naturally skeletonized.
Yeah, no, it's true. I don't think we've ever talked about maceration on the show. But listeners, maceration is this process where you basically take the body that you have and you deflesh it. So you just end up with a skeleton. And there's a ton of different ways to macerate. People who are big bakers or cookers also probably know that you are familiar with the term maceration in regards to like dried fruit. It's the same thing pretty much.
None of these processes are totally different from what we do in our lab.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I've had to deflesh a desiccated body, and it was a forensic case, and like we needed it ASAP. They had already done all they could with the tissue, and they're like, we need the skeleton now. And so they sent me and another intern to it, and it was really tough work.
It is. So yeah, especially when it's really desiccated tissue, you have to pull off as much as you can
and carefully.
Gently,
yeah.
Very carefully.
Because you don't want to mess up the bones.
Exactly. And then we use it's kind of like a huge humidifier that keeps water at a constant temperature. We use meat tenderizer as an enzyme to all of those chefs and bakers, and a little bit of dish soap. And our interns go in shifts and really carefully remove that tissue across time. But it's really not a process that you can rush because you don't want to damage the bone. And then especially, obviously, in forensic context, when we're talking about a case, you really don't want to damage the bone. So it can be a demanding process.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, certainly. I think the other thing that no one had really told me before I got near, especially mummified bodies, but also desiccated bodies, is that the smell is completely different than regular decomp. Like once they're in the really like desiccated stage, it doesn't smell like regular decomp, at least to me, especially with the mummified bodies, because there's like all of these cultural preparations that go into it. So you have like the pine tar, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
With the Egyptian mummies, or whatever was around when they were getting mummified. But the same thing with the desiccated corpses. It's a much like drier smell. I don't know if that sounds dumb, but it's a drier smell.
No, we get that comment all the time. Obviously, things are a little different in the summer, but for the rest of the year, we get that comment all the time. People go outside and they're like, oh, like the smell is not what I was expecting. And it's almost like if you're in kind of like a creek bed.
Yeah.
It has kind of a natural
kind of gamey
smell, but it's not like an overwhelming scent of decomposition.
Yeah. I will never forget the time that I opened a cabinet and there was I suppose it was a desiccated corpse from the Andes, and it smelled nothing so much as my mother's roast lamb.
So I have done a lot of bioarch, not in years, but when I was an undergraduate and going into my master's, I did a lot of bioarchaeology in Peru and worked with a lot of mummies in Peru. And I had never equated them to that, but
think about it, right?
I'm sure
I know
it makes a level of sense.
I know you've never had my mother's roast lamb, but you can imagine what it smells like now.
I'll invite myself over next time, and then I'll be like, yeah, it does. After careful assessment.
My mom does listen to all of these episodes, so sorry, Mom. I don't think I ever told you that.
Mom, invite me over for lamb.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, no. So it's definitely really interesting. One of the things that you mentioned was, so you talked about the decomposition process kind of happening from the inside out, but then other things happen to bodies when they're left out in the wilderness, primarily animals, and in that I include insects, come to visit the body and eat and hang out. You mentioned that it works a little bit differently up in the mountains, like the kind of animals and insect activity that you see. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of where my specialty lies is, I'm of course very interested in the endogenous stuff, but it's really the body becoming like its own little ecosystem that is really, really interesting to me. So, yes, insect colonization. Insects are one of the primary progenitors of decomposition with respect to like actual tissue removal.
Mm-hmm.
But the environmental conditions have to be correct, I guess you could say, for them to become very active. So that's kind of a elegant balancing act between humidity, temperature, things that are going to encourage a fly, for example, to oviposit, but then the environmental conditions that are going to encourage maggot development. So up in the Rockies, for example, when we get these very dramatic, we're experiencing the summer monsoons, the rain will come, well, flies will come, they'll oviposit, maggots will start to develop, but then these really dramatic storms will wash through. Temperatures will drop really dramatically and it'll kind of wash out that colony of maggots. So then another generation of flies will come, oviposit, and the process begins again. So it's not really sort of a straightforward process of oviposition, larval development, tissue removal that I guess reliable is kind of a weird word to use, but that we see a little more reliably like in the Southeast,
Yeah.
where those conditions are more typically ripe. With that, too, we have lots of large bodied scavengers up in the Rockies. So people always assume that bears will come through and just immediately walk off with a donor. Bears are actually super uninterested in human remains.
Huh.
They will, I've seen them scavenge in case context, but even then they'll scavenge like part of a leg. So human remains are really sort of like low value food for them. So they're much more likely to scavenge if other resources are depleted in a season, for example. Coyotes will absolutely scavenge. Fox absolutely scavenge, and they're interesting because they're not as big as a coyote, but they can be as destructive. So they can squish into small places, but do a lot of destruction to a skeleton. So, one of the things we are trying to understand at high altitude is not just who's coming in, but how they are scavenging a body, what kind of imprint they're leaving on the tissue, on the skeleton, so that we can sort of look at, as we understand what individual species are doing, we can start to understand what species are doing as their activity is overprinting one another on a body. And then we're trying to understand how, it's always going to be a partial crapshoot is what a cop said to me once. And I was like trying to be very professional. And I was like, I mean, you're not wrong. But if we can start to kind of understand these overarching patterns of movement through the environment. So, for example, I've spent the last 3 years studying pack rats and how they scavenge, what areas of the body they prefer, what type of bone they tend to remove. At the same time, I've been studying magpies for the exact same reason
Mm.
and establishing patterns for sort of how they approach remains, if there's a seasonal component to it. And then once there's a stronger understanding of that, then we start to look at what fox are doing, for example. And you find some really cool stuff.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things I was reading was your work with magpies. I found your entire PhD dissertation. I gave it a little skim. And I thought that it was a good reminder that there are a lot of animals that eat flesh that you don't expect to. For example, like magpies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most people look at them and think, ha, flesh eater.
Yeah.
People think like vultures, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But as someone who's seen a horse eat a chicken nugget, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Animals act in ways that we just don't expect. So we have documented feral cat scavenging at the facility in Whitewater. My lab manager has published on skunk scavenging. Of course, mice scavenge. That's not as shocking. But one of my favorite things I have observed at high altitude was that coyotes would absolutely come in, but if it was around their reproductive cycle, they were using bodies like you, because we set out game cameras, of course, so we can capture images of them and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see a mom coming with her pups every night and almost using it as like a training opportunity. So bringing them to scavenge, and then you could see her eyes, and she was circling like the whole area, watching out for them. But she wouldn't come in and feed, she would just let them feed. So then I was able to look at and talk about sort of seasonal patterns of scavenging performed by coyotes, because obviously the little pups are doing something much different than their big adult parents are doing with respect to changes or modification to bone and tissue, because they're just tiny.
That's so
so
interesting. And little tiny coyote mouths. It's cute. Sorry.
Oh, it's so cute. I got some pictures of them like right up looking at the game camera.
Oh,
and I'd go to check every day and be like, ooh.
That's so funny. I was just in Mexico, and they'll have like a lot of street dogs there. And someone was like, "Is that a coyote?" I'm like, that is a white
It
dog.
Sure isn't.
And they're like, I wish I could see a coyote. I'm like, go to literally any Western state. You will be able to see them. You don't have to come to Mexico to see coyotes.
Yeah, you definitely do not. When I lived in Los Angeles, if you came home in the middle of the day when it was quiet, we kind of lived up in the hills. They would just be like trotting down the middle of the street.
Zero fear. I know. I worry a little bit about my tiny dog.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway.
I had, yeah.
No, sorry.
Oh, no. I just had, Frankie was my dog that I had for 17 years.
Oh.
She was like, went all over the, everywhere with me, including up to the facility. And we would spend the night up there and stuff. And every night as dusk came, she was like a Cocker Spaniel Poodle mix. So she had like a solid little build, but she was little.
Uh-huh.
And every night at dusk, I'd be like, "Get over here, Frankie. We've got to get in the truck. There's coyotes around."
Yeah. Sometimes when the birds are too big near Rosie, I'm like,
yeah,
maybe you come hang out really close to me.
Yeah. Like in my arms.
Exactly. I think like I saw that picture of Turkana Boy in a textbook when I was like 18, and I was like, that really stuck with me. Rosie's a lot smaller than Turkana Boy. I guess the eagles are smaller too, but not that much smaller.
But still.
They're proportionally smaller to the dog. Like
exactly.
Anyway, sorry. It's really cool. That's super interesting. I feel like I knocked you off track earlier when you were talking about the magpies.
So they just have a pattern that's very different from the pack rats. And, they'll kind of mine muscle out of the body is what I call it. They have all these sort of characteristic trademarks of scavenging. So they'll kind of bore into tissue and create a little series of holes. And then I've captured some really cool sequences of them doing that, and then literally reaching in and pulling out a strip of muscle, eating that, and then going back into the same area until that whole area is clear. So if we're talking about like the compartment of the lower arm, before they move over to another compartment of the arm. So they have these like very cool, very specific patterns of scavenging. And with the little guys, the pack rats, the magpies, their behavior is very typically overprinted by like a larger bodied scavenger. So, one coyote comes in and might completely dismember or eviscerate remains, and then I'm not going to see the effects of maybe what the magpie has done before. So, one of the benefits of the model of the study up at high altitude is that donors, we don't have the money to set up like a big 1 acre fence like we have down here. So donors are kind of polka dotted across the landscape in these camouflaged steel cages, which keeps the large bodied scavengers out, but smaller bodied scavengers can access them. So it's been this really cool study in getting to see physically what the little guys are doing, which is very destructive just over kind of a longer period of time, and the really sort of specific signatures that they leave behind. So, in being limited or having to keep large bodied scavengers out, it's actually given us a ton of data about what the little guys are doing. When we started, I wanted to know what the big guys were doing because who doesn't? But ethical concern there is that coyote runs off with foot,
Right.
leaves it on the doorstep of a neighbor who wants nothing to do with a human foot. And then you have a problem because we actually have a lot of donors at high altitude that are like, leave me out to the animals. I want to be eaten by animals. And I'm like, I would love nothing more than to grant that wish. However,
I was going to say, if it's completely unfenced up there, do people accidentally wander into the facility?
no. So it's on 40 acres. It is fenced by barbed wire. So the area is like delineated.
Uh-huh.
And the thing about the high Rockies is people, by and large, mind their business when you're out in the rural Rockies because there's a lot of people up there that homestead.
Mm-hmm.
So they live in tough sheds. They live in Class C motorhomes. I have worked a case where a guy excavated like a full indigenous style pit house. Like people live in very unique ways. It's very culturally unique up there because we have this whole class of people like veterans, people not necessarily doing anything nefarious, but they really just kind of want to disappear from society. And so you have people that are kind of homesteading across the region. And basically, you don't want to sneak up on someone or encroach upon their land. So there's this interesting kind of like cultural effect up there where people kind of mind their business, stay off land unless they're trying to like herd livestock. So it's not to say that it couldn't happen, but it's very established as kind of private property. It's in a very rural area. And we work very closely with the coroner's office and the sheriff's office. So sheriff's office will do kind of like a semi-regular drive-through of the area. Coroner's office is incredible. I've worked with the coroner, David Kintz, for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And we're about the same age and we fight like brother and sister. And he was instrumental in getting the land donated when I was ready to move on to my dissertation. And so they go perform data collection there. So we have people kind of regularly out there interacting with the site. And then that paired with this sort of cultural phenomenon of mind your business. We have had and the whole site is monitored by cameras. So we've had very good luck with no one coming and kind of interfering.
Yeah. Yeah. Mountain folk can be very insular.
Yeah.
Another PSA in an episode full of PSAs.
Yeah. It's like a funny, very insular, but then also once they have accepted you,
yeah,
very supportive, warm, helpful, like, because you need that when you're living up in the rural Rockies. People get that. Like life is hard up there, even now with our modern conveniences.
For sure.
When there's 10 feet of snow, people are going to have to help one another out. So
that's so much snow.
It's an interesting mix of insular and once I know you're trustworthy, we are like the warmest, most supportive people you can imagine. So that's the other half of it. So, for example, our neighbor has a traumatic brain injury. He owns the 40 acres next to us. His name is Dennis. I have met Dennis numerous times, but he has a TBI. So it typically is at the beginning of every summer or spring when I'm going up there regularly again. He'll pull up and say, "Who are you? Who are you? This is private property. Who are you?" And I'm like, "Dennis, it's me. It's Chrissy. I'm here to work at the facility." And he's like, "Oh, I want to donate my body to the facility. What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, Dennis, we just have a packet of paperwork for you to fill out. And then, we'll add you to our living donor list." And he's like, "How do I get the paperwork?" "I'll have David drop it off, Dennis." Okay. I adore Dennis, and Dennis is very protective of the facility, even when it comes to me.
That's so nice.
So he's like a prime example. I adore Dennis.
For sure. For sure. And that's actually like a good mention, which is that programs like yours rely on body donation. So
Yep.
if you would like to help science out and you're in the Colorado area, I don't really know how far you pick up, but you can donate your body to the facility. Or you can, if you're farther away, you can fly, you can have your family fly. But I think that you guys don't pay for that, right?
Yeah. So we will pick up donors within a 75-mile range of our facility. Anywhere beyond that, it's the responsibility of the estate. And we actually do have people come in from all over the United States. They make contact establish a relationship with a funeral home. Funeral home is able to price all of that for them, facilitate the process of transport. So, gosh, this summer we had people coming in from California, Texas, Arizona. It tends to, some people just want to be here, especially at the high altitude facility. They just specifically want to come to our facility. Or it could be that a facility closer to them isn't currently accepting donations. So it's kind of multifactorial. But yeah, we have paperwork available on our website. People kind of misunderstand our program as we pull from, that sort of nebulous donate your body to science. You might end up at a body farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how it happens at all. Our donors, we are their end of life plans. They know exactly where they're going. They know they're coming to our facility. They know why. We give them options to opt out of certain types of studies. So if they don't want to be used in like a burial study, they can make that request on their paperwork. And so there's no sort of mystery behind it. And they're an incredible group of people because, like I said, we curate their skeletons afterwards. So they're donating themselves in perpetuity to support the education of our students and support forensic research. So it's a really incredible and fun group of people. I talk to them regularly, and it's like it tends to by and large be a certain personality type that's like hyped about donating their body to us. And they're amazing people and hilarious and fun. And so
That's cool. That's cool that it's a completely ethical osteological collection too, because that is also a thing that we've covered in other episodes. You don't need to talk about it if you don't want to.
No, but what I was just going to add is because of that, we have had some casting companies approach us about casting our human remains because it's a transparent collection.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had to tell them no because, we did not disclose to them. They did not agree for their remains to be cast and sold commercially. So that's this other kind of thing that's arising from the ethics behind these questionably sourced collections is people are kind of migrating and wanting to questionably ethically source from our collections now. So it's like creating this sort of ripple effect.
Right.
So
yeah, I think, well, Yeah, I was like, I'm like, maybe I'll donate my body and put in a stipulation that they can cast my skeleton, but only if they donate X% back to the program, you know?
Exactly. Well, so we keep talking about adding that to the paperwork. Like, would you be willing to be cast so that we can offer you more broadly to more educational institutions? But
I feel like the kind of people who are excited about this that they'd probably be excited
be
about that too,
excited
to be
about that.
100% honest.
Totally.
Okay, cool. I did want to just talk a little bit about your background, because I have a few people who are interested in becoming medical legal death investigators who listen. So this is especially for you guys, because Dr. Baigent did that.
I did.
So I guess first, what is medical legal investigator? What do you do?
So a lot of people, the coroner's office gets overlooked. So there's coroner office systems and there's medical examiner systems, and it depends on the state that you're in. And then there's some states that are patchworks of the two. But generally speaking, it's going to be a similar model with respect to death investigation. And so the assumption is always, the detective goes out and performs the whole death investigation, but it is the coroner's office or the medical examiner's office that is in charge of legally assigning cause and manner of death. So every time there's a sudden or unexpected death, a death that, this is Colorado specifically, a death in which an individual hasn't seen a physician in the last 30 days, within 24 hours of them entering, or so after 24 hours of entering a hospital, either court, they have two names depending on the system you're in, but a deputy coroner or a medical legal death investigator will respond to the scene. So just like a detective or anyone else, we perform our own scene investigation. So we're not just, there seems to be this perception that we just roll in and pick up the body and bring it back to the coroner's office. Uh-huh. So we are looking at the body in situ. We are looking at sort of what condition the body is in, what stage of decomposition it's in, but we are also looking at that body in the context of the overall scene. So what is the body position within that scene? What else is going on around that body? Are there sheets being pulled off the bed that makes it look like they were sort of dramatically leaping out of bed? And then obviously we're looking at and collecting any prescription medications. Any material evidence is going to go with the responding law enforcement agency. So things like firearms, illicit drugs, non-prescription drugs, things like suicide notes should go with the coroner because they are informing cause and manner of death. Sometimes you will see arguments between coroners and law enforcement over who gets to take the suicide note. But so performing a complete scene investigation, and then I'll just speak to Colorado because that's obviously where I worked up in Summit County. We were in charge of transporting the remains back to our facility. Once we get back to the facility, of course, the individual goes into a cooler, cold storage. But what I'm doing before that is performing a full external exam. So there's a lot of things you're just not going to see on scene, maybe because of body position. So any kind of trauma, any kind of old or existing injuries that might kind of overall inform the investigation. So full external exam of the decedent, pulling vitreous fluid, urine, blood to be sent for toxicology.
And vitreous fluid is the stuff that comes out of the eyes for listeners.
It is, yep. My dad is a biologist, and we were talking about this once, and he was like, when you pull vitreous fluid from an eye, does it kind of like suck up a little bit? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, ooh.
Eyes really freak a lot of people out.
They do. When I'm training new people, the vitreous fluid tends to be what they're most kind of like nervous about.
The person's dead though. They're not going to feel it.
Exactly.
But yes, no, I mean, I understand people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking all big, but I can't wear contacts because I can't touch my eye.
Touch your eyeball. Yeah. I don't need contacts, but if I did, I wouldn't be able to do it either.
Well, when I went to go see if I could do it, the ophthalmologist, I was there for like an hour and the ophthalmologist just was like, "You're still here learning how to put on contacts?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "12-year-olds can do this." And then he just walked away.
Like, wow.
It's like,
wow.
okay, well, contacts are not for me, clearly. Anyway, vitreous
Get a
fluid.
12-year-old in here to teach me.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So
you collect fluid.
I'm going to
Yes.
pull fluids to be sent for toxicology, unless, because at this time we're also looking at sort of the sum of circumstance, and we're going to make the decision about whether or not an individual is going to be sent to autopsy. So if they're going to be sent to autopsy, I will generally not pull toxicology unless it's something I'm worried about, like hypermetabolizing in the system that I want to capture before the individual is going to make it to autopsy. But beyond that, we are legally entitled to all medical records, all mental health records. So we perform a full assessment of those. So it looks like it could be a natural death. Here's signs I'm seeing of liver failure, for example. What am I seeing in the medical records? Is that supported or is that inconsistent with what's sort of been documented? And then I'm going to interview anyone on scene. I'm going to perform follow-up interviews with like family members, close friends, anyone that might inform the investigation. So it's a very holistic investigation that's both on the scene, in the autopsy suite. Typically, it depends on what office you're working in, but typically the deputy will accompany the decedent and observe the autopsy so that they can talk to the forensic pathologist, ask questions. Typically, pathologists are amazing about kind of showing you what they're looking at if it's something very relevant. And then all of that information is going to be aggregated and a determination of cause and manner of death will be made. So it's incredibly interesting work because every scene is completely different. It's rewarding work. What I think a lot of people maybe don't expect or understand is just how much you're working with families. So the view on working with families is going to be different in every office. I was in office that was very family forward. So I would have 3-hour conversations with family members because they kind of see you as the bridge between their loved one who they've suddenly lost and answers. And so some families can become incredibly reliant on you in their grief because you're sort of that bridge for them. 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, we are also the ones making the death notification. So we're telling them that their loved one has died. They're coming to us for answers. The suite of answers that we can provide is obviously going to change as the investigation advances. So you're talking to them somewhat regularly. And so for me, honestly, what started to become really difficult was the emotional toll of working with the families. And it's not that I loved working with the families. I loved being able to provide that kind of support. But there was families, I was still talking to a year and a half later, or I'd get I had one decedent who was very close with his two brothers. And one of his brothers for the next year and a half would randomly text me just like incredibly sad, painful texts. And it's hard to not like internalize that.
Yeah.
Especially when they're families you've had a really good relationship with and you want to provide support for. But I'm also not a mental health professional. So it becomes really hard for us as deputies, I think by and large, to sort of walk that line of providing answers, providing support, but not to the degree that it's at the cost of our own mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to bring that up to my students and anyone else who is interested in death investigation. It's a very interesting job, like I said, because every scene is different, every interaction is different, every case circumstance is different. You will learn the best about human beings and the worst about human beings.
Yeah.
But there are some things that a lot of people going into it not anticipating, and that sort of heavy emotional toll is one of them.
Yeah. I think that this is one of those places where TV shows really do a disservice because, it's like an hour and then it's done, but that's not what it's like in real life.
Yeah.
Every person who dies has like a real, well, not every person, but most people who die have real people who mourn them.
Exactly.
And you're going to interact with them. So it's very different than media.
Yeah. And then you might be interacting with complex family dynamics where
Yes.
family members hate one another, but they all individually kind of want to talk to you, and then we'll do things like, we want you on our side. And I'm like, I'm on nobody's side.
I'm on the side of the law, technically. Actually.
On the side of your deceased loved one.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there can be a lot of, I always joke that I'm the misanthropic anthropologist because I work with dead people who don't interact with me. I'm not. I actually came to anthropology via cultural anthropology. But so then to be thrust in such a human interaction, complex emotional interaction forum, I was not expecting when I was a new investigator.
Yeah.
And then just being faced with people's deep grief, even if they're not directly placing it on you, I'll say for simplicity, but just being faced with some of the grief you see is it definitely takes a toll.
For sure.
So the discipline as a whole is moving toward recognizing that and being much more proactive about providing investigators and everyone associated sort of support or avenues for mental health, mental support. But that's really just been a movement in the last few years.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So like I said, I just like to make people interested in investigations aware, one, that it's a very cool job and much more involved than it's ever presented to be, because the coroner's not cool. But then also there is this whole other kind of complex emotional or interpersonal component to it.
Right. I think the other thing to note is that one of the things that I get asked about is, do you need a PhD to do this? And the answer is no.
Oh, no, absolutely not. So I have a lot of undergrads that go to do it. In the state of Colorado, to run for coroner, you need to have a high school degree and be a legal citizen. So offices are getting much more, forensic sciences as a whole, and then, by proxy, coroner's offices, coroner investigators are getting much more serious about sort of the standards. So standards for investigation, standards for how an office is run, so that you can basically demonstrate that you have run a very clean investigation, that you're investigating every case the exact same way. So, and then going into death investigation has just gotten more popular. So it is beneficial to have at least a bachelor's degree. Everyone now is looking for some experience in the biological sciences. So that would be of huge benefit. We at CMU and other universities I know have the same. You can get a certificate, like an EMT certificate, and that's going to give you sort of some of that medical background that we are obviously not pathologists, but we want to be able to read and understand medical records. We want to be able to communicate with the pathologist. So going through but that level of medical training really makes you stand out on your CV or as you're applying for sort of that type of position. Having ever been around human remains, another huge thing that's going to look good on an application. They want to make sure you won't go out on your first case and run screaming.
Fair.
So no, absolutely do not have a PhD, do not need a PhD, and I wouldn't recommend you get a PhD for that,
Yeah.
for an investigative job. But there are some things that you can do to make you stand out as the discipline becomes a little more competitive for hiring.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. I know that's not probably what you expected to talk about, but.
Oh no, I love talking about it.
Okay.
And I love to reinforce, to people that are interested in XYZ, do some research about what level of education you need, because I work with incredible coroners. Like I said, David up in Park County, I work with incredible people who have a ton of experience and knowledge, and you don't need a PhD for every position, for most positions. So do research on the reality of kind of what education level you need, because there are brilliant people all around us that we can learn from, take knowledge from, and having a certain set of letters after your name, other than ticking a box like I needed it for this position. But other than ticking a box, it doesn't necessarily make you smarter than anyone else around you who's a lifelong learner, who has a ton of experience. So
yeah,
I always try to impress upon my students, look all around you for the knowledge, including your classmates, including just look all around you for the knowledge, and don't assume that some letters after your name or some letters after someone else's name necessarily makes them all that much smarter, because honestly, that's often not the case.
No, it's true. It's I remember I worked on this site, and the supervising anthropologist, he called in this guy who loves buttons. He just knew everything there is to know about the American manufacture of buttons. And
I love those people.
Yeah, he could identify, like we pulled out buttons and he was like, this was manufactured in X year and this was manufactured in Y year. So, so we could essentially date remains partially that way.
Yeah.
Because it was a disturbed site. So we weren't 100% sure. Like we knew that people were from the 1800s. That's 100 years, right?
Right. Something 1800s.
Exactly. And he was like, that they weren't buried after Y year, and like we have age estimates and stuff like that. So like, and we knew who was supposed to be there. They just weren't in the right spots. So like with all of that together, we were able to like figure out like who was who. But that guy didn't have a PhD.
Yeah.
I think he had a college degree, but I don't think it was in buttons. Like,
yeah, a PhD in buttons. That would be incredible.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm sure there's an archaeologist or like a historian out there that does have a PhD in buttons, but like,
oh, I'm sure.
So it's, I don't know, like if you're really passionate about something and you will be able to find ways to share your knowledge, and you're right. You absolutely do not need to get a PhD. You need to get a PhD for certain things. For example, running decomposition facilities. People don't really like when people without PhDs do that, but for many other things, you don't need it.
No, not at all. And you look at what you want to do, look at what the reality of education is, and don't feel pressed to go beyond that for some sort of perceived notoriety, because like I said, there's brilliant people all around us, regardless of what degree they're holding on to.
For sure.
And it's incredible to meet those people and learn from those people. And so, like I said, I say to my students, like, don't limit yourself to like looking at who's above you or who you perceive to be above you. Look all around you, because there's brilliant people interested in the most random stuff. Like buttons. That you can learn so much from if you just quiet yourself and listen to them.
For sure. Yeah. We're going to have a historian who his area of interest is New England cemeteries, colonial New England cemeteries.
That's awesome.
His name's Ray
Because they
Romano.
know so much about iconography and all of that, and like how it ties into greater patterns of ritual and stuff that I'm like, I see an angel.
Yeah, I think he'll be my first completely non-anthropologist on the show.
Cool.
So I'm excited to have him. But anyway, sorry, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to talk about?
I don't think so.
Is there any like particular case that you would like to mention, or should we transition into the last part of the interview?
No, I mean, I can talk all day if there's something else you want me to talk about, but
no,
I don't.
Okay, good. I just want to. That means I did a good job.
Shut up.
No, it means I did a good job as an interviewer. If you're like, I feel like I said everything I needed to say. That's good.
I've said my piece.
Perfect. Okay. Well, on that note, last part of the interview. First question for you: if someone wanted to learn more about the basics of what you do, whether that be your specific research or kind of forensic anthropology in general, where would be a good place for them to start?
Well, you mean from like a book perspective, or from
book, website, whatever?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of classic books in forensic anthropology / forensic taphonomy. I don't think I defined taphonomy, but that's everything that happens to a body from the time of death to the time of recovery. So decomposition, interaction with wildlife, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Haglund and Marcy Sorg are the editors of Forensic Taphonomy and Advances in Forensic Taphonomy. And both of those books each chapter kind of covers taphonomy from a different angle. So it's, like I said, they're very classic books, but they're still very relevant books and give a really good overview of just every sort of scientific perspective on the taphonomy of human remains. It's right in the title. But that is a fantastic book, or couple of books, to give an overview on sort of what we are interested in as at these types of facilities or as forensic taphonomists. And Marcy Sorg is a brilliant woman. I just saw her at the Academy meetings a couple of days ago. Also, the kindest woman, which is the kind of scientists we love.
Yeah.
So she's actually working on a 3rd edition right now, but that gives a really solid foundation to kind of like a holistic perspective on the discipline.
And that's Academy of Forensic Sciences, right?
Where I just was.
Yes.
Sorry. Yep. American Academy of Forensic Sciences meetings. Yes. We were just in New Orleans, actually.
Yeah, that's so much fun.
I was presenting on burnt human remains.
Yay. Just because I don't think I've ever mentioned AAFS on the show. But yes, just in case anyone's interested in that, it's there.
Yes. So the Academy is sort of a umbrella, and then siloed under that umbrella are 11 disciplines of forensic sciences. I am 95% sure. And one of those is anthropology. So there's sort of it's international meetings, but the Academy serves a much greater sort of function in that as we work towards standardizing different disciplines, as we work towards standardizing and becoming transparent in our methods in forensic analyses, the Academy is kind of spearheading that as an umbrella, but then each siloed discipline is also working on those standards. So it kind of brings us all together toward that same pursuit. So they serve a very important function. Definitely worth students who think they're interested in forensic anthropology, forensics in general, definitely worth looking up the section relevant to your interest, because they have student membership, discounted ways to attend the meetings. And because they're international, it's an incredible way to one, see what kind of research is going on around the world, but two, to network with professionals from all over the world.
Yeah. And forensic scientists are, in general, very good networkers, very good international networkers, is something that I've noticed. Like almost every single person I've talked to has ties with another facility somewhere else.
Yep, absolutely.
Whether that just be friendship or like professional.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Second question. What are you reading for work right now?
I am reading, it's right next to me. I am reading Burnt Human Remains, Recovery, Analysis, and Interpretation.
You gotta love when it does what it says on the tin.
Tells you exactly what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember if I've told this story on the show before, but I'm doing a separate cannibalism podcast, and I was reading conference papers from like a 1970 something conference on infanticide. And the book, just in giant letters, it just says infanticide across the cover. And I was reading it on BART, which is our public transit. And I kept getting really weird looks. And I was like, what's wrong with people? And then
I forget what
I was like, oh, right. It says, I was like, it's more in the realm of like fish eating their eggs rather than, I'm not looking at like recipes for children.
Like, not reading up on Kuru. Like,
no. I was like, I need everyone to calm down.
I wonder what that book's about.
So yeah. Anyway, just a reminder for all you people who read on public transit.
Public transit. Yeah. It happens to me a lot. My lab space on campus for teaching is in a different building. So I, on numerous occasions, have had like a skeletal cast under each arm walking across campus, not trying to be funny or haha, look at my skulls. It's because I am sort of the on-brand absent-minded professor where I'm like, oh God, I teach in 2 minutes and load up my arms. But yeah, I will catch focus every now and then and realize I'm running across campus with 2 skull casts, not real ones, but 2 skulls under my arms. So it's easy to do. Occupational hazard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of any of us that are interested in science and not your typical topics, I will say.
No, I knew someone who was traveling through, they're flying with a skull that they had legally procured, dug up in, but it was out of a military site or something. And so a dog alerted on them because they smelled like gunpowder or something like that. And so then they had to explain why they had a human skull in their luggage. And it was because you can't check that. You have to take it with you on the plane.
Right.
And it was apparently just like really devolved.
Yeah. You're like, it's not what it looks like. It's kind of what it looks like, but like, it's not what it looks like.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like, you get so used to it. Like, you just don't think about it. You're like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm not going to check my skeleton. Like,
yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, burnt human remains tracks. Perfect. Last question is, what are you consuming for fun right now?
Fun seems like a weird thing to attach to the title, but I'm reading the new Jim Crow, which is Michelle Alexander. Please have that right. It's an incredible book about sort of the ways in which the justice system has sort of kept slavery alive, I will say, through its structure and function.
Yeah.
And sort of who we prosecute and why, and what we criminalize and why. And one of my huge areas of interest as a biological anthropologist, because, biological anthropologist first, forensic anthropologist second, is this sort of cultural concept of race that is misconstrued as a biological reality, and how cultural systems serve to reinforce that idea. And so it's a brilliant book. It's really well done. It's actually my second read of it because she does such a nice job kind of synthesizing these really complex concepts. So anyone who thinks they might be even a little bit interested, I highly recommend, because I think, a lot of people now superficially understand that race is a cultural concept, no biological reality. We know that racism exists in our society, especially right now. But I don't think that a lot of people understand just how complexly intertwined it is in sort of our cultural mimesis. So,
yeah,
highly recommend for sort of beginning to gain an understanding of that because it's really important concepts, especially like I said, right now. This what's going on right now didn't happen in a vacuum, and so kind of understanding the systems in place and the historicity helps make sense of what's going on right now. It doesn't mitigate it at all, but it helps make sense of it. And then it starts to help people understand how they might help to enact change.
yes. A book in a similar vein, but from more of a legal perspective, maybe, is Just Mercy.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. I would say it is an easy read and that the writing is good. It is not much like the new Jim Crow, is not something that's easy to read and be like, wow, I'm having a good time.
Having a great time. Oh, you know what else I just finished reading is called Sister, keeping on the pleasant light topic. It's called, have you heard of Sisters in Hate?
No.
So she goes through the stories of three women who are in the white supremacy movement. One who has since left, two who are kind of high up. But what she's essentially discussing is that there's all these narratives around womanhood and reproduction that are used within white supremacy groups to sort of manipulate what a woman is.
Yeah.
But more interestingly, her sort of takeaway is we need to stop looking at white supremacists as males because there are women who are very high up in the organization that get kind of ignored by outside culture because, as we often do, whether it be intentional or unintentional, we think that the men hold all of the capital, all of the cultural capital, that they're doing the important work. And so she basically predicted like the uprise of an Erica Kirk type of character who is very aligned with white supremacist values, but she's seen as, and you know, she's got this, she's been able to sort of capture this collective imagination among these very racist groups. But she's also a little blonde woman. She's nothing to be concerned with, but she actually is this huge centralizing point that is kind of dog whistling all of these groups, all of these sort of people with white supremacist ideals. She's a very charismatic, centralizing figure. And so, kind of the takeaway of this book that's woven together really nicely between like easy read, but woven together really nicely from historic perspective, modern perspective, but how we need to start taking women who are part of the white supremacist movement very seriously because it's almost like they're building this big empire right in front of us, but it's become invisible because we're looking at what the men are doing, as we so often do.
Right.
And this was published 2020, early 2020.
Yeah.
And she basically, without knowledge of Erica Kirk, predicts someone major like Erica Kirk rising up and being sort of this centralizing feminine figure for all of these different groups that are very racist.
Yep.
I'll just stop being polite.
No, it's fine.
So that's a fantastic book too, because it's very easy to read, but you walk away like, damn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That about sums up all of right now.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. That's totally fair.
Just, you know, what a time to be alive.
What a time. What a time to be alive. Well, on that note, thank you so much for thank you so much.
fun interview with an incredibly depressing.
It's okay. It's because we live in a depressing time. That's not your fault.
I know.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Anthrobiology Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me at gabby.lapera@anthrobiology.com. That's spelled GABY.LAPERA@anthrobiology.com. This show is produced by me. Music courtesy of Chad Crouch, aka Poddington Bear at Sound of Picture.